It's the part-time trader back with another update on cryptocurrency markets here on YouTube. I first of all must apologize for the fact that I've been pretty absent of late. If you are keen to get more updates from myself on technical analysis, charts, the world of crypto, equities, and much more, then please do make sure you head over to X to follow me through @PartTimeCharts, where I post much more regular updates than I do here on YouTube. But every now and again, people who have followed me for a little while know that I like to do a sort of 30 to 40 minute deep dive on some of the charts and what they're telling me about the state of global markets. And today we're going to focus on cryptocurrencies. If you find any of this useful, informative, entertaining, then please do hit the subscribe and the like buttons. Help me grow the channel. That would be much appreciated. But please do remember that these are just the mere thoughts of a market amateur, somebody who has spent many, many years obsessing over charts, technical analysis, and I hope that some of the ideas are useful, but I certainly wouldn't advocate that anybody tries to make any investment or financial decisions off the back of anything that you hear here on YouTube or on X. So please remember, none of this is financial advice. Right, let's get stuck in. So it's been an eventful couple of weeks in the world of global markets. In particular in crypto, we've seen some really sizable moves, and they may not look huge on the chart, but I think when you start to see some of the levels and the trend lines that are being violated in some of these markets, which I will talk you through over the next half an hour, then I think you realize that this is a really significant time. And for me, I have been saying for many months now, pretty much all year, that Bitcoin is in the process of putting in a macro top that will send it much lower than anybody can imagine. To find out how low, if you haven't heard my predictions already, then do stay tuned for a little while. But let's kick off with this, which is a stablecoin dominance chart. So this is USDC dominance plus USDT dominance, the two major stablecoins in the crypto space. And I've been saying for a number of weeks now that eventually we are going to come back up and we're going to take out these highs that were put in the summer of 24 and early spring of 25. And when we do, it's likely that we will have broken this massive downtrend and that this will signal a bottom for stablecoin dominance, heading into a period in which people are exiting Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, all the crypto projects that we know and love, and are moving into stablecoins en masse. And already what you've seen over the last week is a really significant break of this downtrend. And for me, this is an absolute flashing red light. This is a major warning signal to crypto investors that the tide is changing, that if you were expecting Bitcoin to go on this huge run that sends it into $500,000, $1 million over the coming months, year, it just ain't happening, guys. And I've been saying this for a while, but this to me looks like a corrective pattern in stablecoin dominance, and ultimately when BTC tops out and starts rolling over, we're going to see this chart going much higher. And I think we could be in for a move that sees stablecoin dominance top out at potentially twice the height of the 2022 correction in cryptocurrency markets. And that would mean that everything other than stablecoins in the crypto ecosystem is going to get absolutely crushed, in my opinion. And let's take a look at Bitcoin for a bit more on what I'm talking about. Again, not a new chart, something that I have been pointing to for many months. But look, everybody has been super bullish up here, and we're treating this, despite the fact that Bitcoin has gone from $15,000, $16,000 to $120,000 in the space of a couple of years. For some reason, despite that huge appreciation in the price of Bitcoin, everybody has been convincing themselves this entire year that the move is only just beginning and that we were on the brink of the big parabolic run that was going to send it to $500,000, $1 million, whatever kind of outlandish target people have wanted to put on the price of Bitcoin. And I have been one of very few accounts on here pointing out that if you look at this long-term log growth trend for Bitcoin, you see that this is starting to flatten out and that we were starting to get into territory that looked like a top for Bitcoin. Now remember, this chart goes all the way back to Bitcoin's inception in 2009. So you're talking about 16 years of price action with this kind of uniform topping every time we meet the top end of this growth curve. And the more times we top out in the region of this growth curve, the more data points we have, which improves the accuracy of it moving forward. And so I felt pretty confident all this year that we were in the region of topping out. And yes, you could bend this up slightly and maybe we might eke out a little bit more into the 150k range. But I've been saying for a while that the days of expecting Bitcoin from here to produce parabolic returns, to go absolutely bananas and make everybody rich, those days are just not here right now. And instead what we would get was a sideways market for the best part of a year, followed by a deep correction. Now we've had the sideways market, and I believe, this is the monthly chart, I believe we are now starting to see the early stages of the deep correction that I've been forecasting for so long. I mean, just look at the candlestick formations on this monthly chart. For a start, we've got this tweezer top up here, 2 wicks to the downside. We've had 4 months of going sideways. We had another wick up here last month in October, and price has been rejected. And now you're starting to see the weakness come in. And what is happening over here? This is the MACD on the monthly chart, and you can see when you get this bearish cross, when the blue line crosses under the orange line, what you have, if you go back to here in 2021, you see the moment that cross happens at the end of 2021, Bitcoin is in trouble, and what you get is a really deep correction of 60-70% over the following months. Now I think this is even worse this time, and I think there is a good reason to believe that Bitcoin is heading much lower than anybody can really anticipate, and we'll come on to that in a second. But whether you buy into the view that Bitcoin is going to go down 70, 80, 90%, is really up to you. What you'd struggle to convince me of right now is that this kind of formation is bullish for Bitcoin. I just don't see it. I think the fact that the MACD is rolling over is about to make that bearish cross. We're about to get our first red mark on the histogram here. I really think these are major warning signs. And when you look at the confluence between this chart and what I just showed you, which is stablecoin dominance breaking out for the first time from this downtrend in, what is this, 2.5 years it's taken of constantly being rejected at this trend line, and finally stablecoin dominance is breaking through, which, as I say, just adds to my overall feeling that there is something really off with this market. Let's take a look at what I've been expecting. So this is the chart that gets me a lot of criticism on X. Anytime I post this, my replies are full of people telling me that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But they're the same people that were telling me I had no idea what I was talking about up here when Bitcoin was at $125,000, $130,000. And since then, price has come down 30%. So forgive me if I pay very little mind to what the experts on X tell me. I just think, I've been saying for many months now, that this whole move up for Bitcoin was built on unstable foundations. This wasn't the kind of parabolic move that everybody was looking for. Yes, if you got in here at the very bottom and you sold here at the very top, then congratulations for you. I think you've done probably something like 800% during that time, 700%. That's fantastic, and I'm not knocking it. If you were one of the few that bought right at the bottom and sold right at the top, you've done incredibly well. But if you are sitting on Bitcoin up here and you're expecting that this is the early part of a move, I'm sorry, the technicals just do not support that view at all. And I've been saying that this whole move up, instead of being the kind of explosive price action that we've seen in 2016, 17, and again in 2020 to 2021, what we've had is this slow grinding up where it's taken us 3 years to hit the highs of 125 to 130k, where we got to early last month, and price has been rejected once again from this upper boundary here, this trend line here, and price having broken back into this sort of rising channel structure, which if you just look at how neat some of these touch points are here, what you've got is this trend line capping price, supporting price on so many different occasions. And recently you saw another rejection from the upper boundary of this channel right alongside the upper boundary of this sort of megaphone broadening wedge pattern. And exactly as I projected back in September, price has been rejected again, has come down, and we're testing the lower boundary of this rising channel. Now, I know you can argue, there are some purists who come and point out to me on X all the time that this can't be a rising channel because there have only been 2 touches. That may be the case, but all I am suggesting is that this upper boundary here has been really significant for price, and I suspect that when the lower boundary gives here, when the trend line that connects these 2 points gives, then we are going to see a really rapid decline in the price of Bitcoin. And I'm not suggesting that this red squiggle has to be followed exactly. We could come down into this 75k region and we could bounce, and then we could roll over mid next year. Frankly, I don't really know what path it's going to take, but all I know is that at the moment this is not bullish price action. And I believe when you look at the state of global markets, I firmly believe that the Nasdaq and AI stocks are in a massive bubble. I think that bubble is set to continue. I think we're going to get a period of 6 to 12 months of immense price action for the Nasdaq and for tech stocks. But when they eventually roll over in mid to late 2026, I think crypto is going to get hit even harder. So the fact that this is breaking down while equities are still at all-time highs and still look really strong, to me, is a major, major red flag. And I believe that we'll get the first leg down while the Nasdaq continues to be strong. And then at some point in 2026, equities and crypto will all roll over together. Now, interestingly, I think crypto will be the strongest off the bottom in 2027, but that is some way out. So let's deal with that in a future video. And I think when I'm looking at this chart and I'm looking at the confluence between this bottom trend line here and this support zone here, which has been pivotal to price action, many, many times, granted not since 2020, but if you look in 2017, in 2018, 2019, and in 2020, this zone here was really, really crucial. And I genuinely believe there is a decent probability that Bitcoin is going to fall to levels that are unimaginable to people. And for me, that is $3,000 to $4,000, which might sound crazy. And I get replies all the time saying, if Bitcoin ever goes that low, I'm going to buy every Bitcoin there is, and I'm going to remortgage my house, and I'm going to buy. Look, you may be one of the smart people that will do that, but trust me when I say most people will be absolutely terrified when Bitcoin's down here. And if you've been holding any kind of cryptocurrency during that period, you will have lost everything if this happens. And if you're not, will you have the guts to be able to dip your toe in the water, to get your money out and purchase cryptocurrency? Again, there will be all sorts of fear in the market down here. So look, again, not financial advice. I'm not telling you what you should do, but for me, I am staying well away from cryptocurrency at the moment and will not be getting back into Bitcoin, altcoins of any kind until at least 2027. And I just wanted to flash this chart up really quickly because this is GBTC. So this is the Grayscale Bitcoin ETF. Been a lot of chat about ETFs over the last year or two. Grayscale were the first to do it, really, bringing a sort of exchange traded product to market that meant that ordinary people could buy exposure to Bitcoin. And this chart looks a bit odd because it doesn't completely mirror the Bitcoin chart, but there is a massive correlation, of course. Major tops, major bottoms, all put in the same area. And as you can see, as Bitcoin starts to roll over, so does this. And this chart here, I've been saying probably for the best part of this year that this is the real cheat code for me, because if you look at how well defined this upper boundary is, again, for me, while everybody was screaming bullish up here and expecting Bitcoin to go on some sort of generational run, I was the only one pointing out that the GBTC chart was signaling that this was resistance, this was an area to be cautious, to think about taking profits. And now, some months later, we're finally starting to see price rollover, breaking this uptrend. I think this is going to go back to levels that most people believe are completely impossible, because this to me looks like an absolute giant rising wedge pattern, which dates all the way back to 2017. So you're talking about the best part of a decade that this rising wedge pattern has been forming for. When it breaks, I don't think it's going to be pretty for crypto investors. And here's Ethereum, right? So look, you might look at this squiggle and think this guy's mad. How the hell has he arrived on Ethereum going back to $80? But if I'm right about the macro environment, if I'm right about this being, the end stage for the Nasdaq and for the S&P, and yes, I see more upside for equities in the short term, and some of that could be explosive if you're in the right equities. But I make no bones about the fact that I expect there to be a hard correction, that rates are going to remain higher for longer, inflation is going to continue to be a concern, governments are not going to be able to print their way out of this one for much longer, and that means that the average investor is likely to suffer. And if I'm right about equities, then it makes sense that crypto will get hit even harder in that environment. And there are signs, and there have been signs for a while, that altcoins are cooked, and that the kind of gains that people have come to expect from altcoins are just not going to be delivered in the sort of short to medium term. And one of those signs is that this uptrend in Ethereum, which again dates all the way back to 2016 and has held on multiple occasions, has now been backtested as resistance here. And we've recently come up and taken out the all-time high, the November 2021 high, and price is starting to roll over and get rejected from those highs. And interestingly, let's pull up a different ETH chart. One other thing I would say is that this level here, right? This level here at about $4,000 is so key, because it was resistance here, resistance here. That resistance was flipped into support briefly, but when Ethereum lost that support, look at what happened. Massive drawdown. And for people telling me that, there's absolutely zero possibility that ETH goes back to $60, $70, $80, like, you guys must not have been around for very long, because look at the size of this drawdown here. This was an 80% drawdown in a period where the Nasdaq declined by about 30%. Now, if there is the kind of generational crisis that we might have seen back in 2008 and in 2000, and the Nasdaq declines by 50, 60, 70%, what the hell do you think is going to happen to Ethereum? Seriously, do you think it's going to keep going up during that period? Now, you might say, well, you could just be wrong about global markets. I would implore you to go and check out some of the charts that I've posted for the Nasdaq, etc. I am super bullish on the Nasdaq short term, but eventually, there are lots of people who are going to get punished for being in equity markets late next year. And if that happens, just remember, it's just an if. Just entertain the idea. What happens to Ethereum and some of these altcoins? And there's some big warning signs on this chart that things are not looking pretty for Ethereum holders. The first is that this level here, which is held as resistance, resistance, support, resistance, 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 support, has given way again. And look at this. We put in a high, we retested that high, we broke through, everybody was super bullish here. And lo and behold, price fell back under and went on a long-term shift to the downside. And what have we had here? High, 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 high. Oh, we flipped it into resistance. ETH is going to the moon. Tom Lee starts calling for 10, 20k ETH. And again, what happens? We break back under. We've given up this trendline support. Again, there's nothing to be bullish about on ETH at the moment. And just look at ETH BTC. You know, when price arrived back at this downtrend earlier this year in August, everybody was screaming that ETH BTC had broken out and that this was going to new highs. And I was the only person who was suggesting that we wait and we be patient and we see whether this is a rejection or whether we get some sort of flip of this trend line. And what has happened, it has been a rejection. And I believe that longer term, ETH is going to be one of the most bullish assets in the world from 27 onwards. But right now, I think more downside to come for ETH BTC. I want us to take out these lows here, to take out this entire block of lows, and then eventually break this downtrend in 2027, 28, 29 before ETH BTC starts to go absolutely berserk. But in the meantime, nothing to be bullish about on ETH. You know, when you put these highs in and then you flip them to resistance and everybody gets bullish and then you slip back under, from a technical perspective, this is called a fake out, and it is not something you want to be holding, in my view. Let's take a look at Solana. Now this is a masterpiece of mine, one that I'm really, really proud of, because look, I don't get everything right. And when you get something wrong, you know, clearly you're going to get an awful lot of criticism on X, especially when you're bearish, because everybody wants crypto and altcoins to go up, especially those who are invested in them. But back here, all the way back in September, I predicted that this would be some sort of rising wedge with a throw over, and I scribbled out this blue line, and look how closely we're following it. But if you zoom out a bit, there were some clues that the structure of Solana was changing and was starting to morph into something that was bearish. The first was that we took out this all-time high here, this red line at 260. We took this out 3 times in late 2024 and then early 2025, and price could not hold above the all-time high. So you see these wicks, prices getting rejected, having taken out the high, having swiped it. And then the second sign was that this uptrend waned and then was lost in early 2025. Now, since then, we've had this bounce, and it's been a decent bounce. We've gone from, you know, $100 up to 250. But really, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at this on a weekly basis, this looks like nothing more than a corrective move to the upside, which eventually will give way and come back. I believe my first target is to these lows here at about $95. And so far, this blue squiggle has been insanely accurate. I think there's still more downside to come over the coming weeks. But what really interests me about Solana is this chart here, because I have been saying that this whole period here is distributive, and eventually this uptrend, which you can see here, which has held price from 2020 into 2023 and beyond, when that uptrend gives way, I fully expect a macro change in the direction of Solana. And that as a bare minimum, I expect us to come back and retest these lows at $8, but potentially for us to go even lower into this $4 to $5 region. Now, again, I know lots of people cannot even begin to fathom that happening, but those same people were the people that were caught offside when Solana was trading at $250 and everyone was bullish on it in 2021. And what happened? It came all the way back to $8. So look, this is only 4 years ago, right? So if you're saying this cannot happen, I implore you to just zoom out and look at what happened a mere 4 years ago when the price of Solana completely collapsed into the $8 region. There is nothing bullish about this multi-year uptrend giving way after a long period of distribution at the highs, where we've taken out the previous all-time high and we failed to hold above it. We're now breaking down from the uptrend. I think eventually these lows will get taken out as well, and price will roll over, and it's going to go much, much lower than most people can imagine. And there are broken structures all over crypto at the moment. This is the SWI chart, famously Raoul Pal's favorite coin, one that he has been pushing really, really hard for many, many months now. And I've been saying for ages that there's nothing bullish about this SR flip here being returned to multiple times. So look, we take these highs, we flip them into support, price drives higher. Look, fantastic returns if you were on the right end of this trade. But why does price keep coming back to this SR zone? If this was really bullish, this would have gone by now. You wouldn't have a second, a third, a fourth opportunity to buy in this region here, in this sort of $2 region. The fact that we're back down here again, I said earlier this week that getting back below this sort of 195 level would be a bearish sign and potentially a great trigger for a short back to the 2024 lows here at 50 cents. And I know most people can't believe what I'm saying when I project that this is going to go from, you know, $2 as it was earlier in the week down to 50 cents. To be honest with you guys, I think it's going to go much, much lower. I would not be surprised to see this trading at 10 cents over the next year and a half to 2 years. And this structure, I have seen this so many times. If you follow me over on X through @PartTimeCharts, there are loads of examples where support is being flipped into resistance, where uptrends are breaking. You know, at the same time, stablecoin dominance is breaking down. BTC looks weak, and we've got a monthly bearish crossover on the MACD. I see very, very little signs of bullishness in the cryptocurrency market right now. So I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. I've seen this coming. I know people have mocked me all year because Bitcoin has largely gone sideways, and so has Solana. And I think people have very little patience in this market. People watch the 1 minute chart, the 1 hour chart, but they fail to step back and look at the big picture. And I have been saying for the entirety of 2025 that crypto is topping out, that most of your favorite altcoins are going to go close to zero, and that this market is done for another couple of years. And I still believe that to be the case. I think when this correction is over, and I suspect that will be at some point in 2027, there are going to be some absolutely phenomenal buying opportunities. But for now, why am I going to be wasting my time with this when equities have been delivering much bigger gains all year, when you're buying actual companies that generate real cash flows, where the risk return ratios are much, much better? I will not be touching crypto with a barge pole, and I hope this has helped you maybe to think about the markets in a slightly different way. Remember, none of this is financial advice. I am somebody who is a mere amateur. The clue is in the name, part-time trader. But I tell you what, I've spent a long time looking at charts, and I know enough to know that I will not be touching SWI, I will not be touching Solana, I will not be touching ETH, and I will not be touching Bitcoin when the charts look like this. If any of that has been interesting, informative, entertaining, please do hit the subscribe and the like buttons. It does help me massively to grow the channel. And please, like I said right at the beginning of the video, head over to @PartTimeCharts on X for more frequent updates from me. Take care, guys.